cliff face in Adelaide South, the delicate rescue operation unfolded at Maslin Beach after the man fell, becoming stuck for several hours. He was airlifted to hospital with non-life-threatening head injuries. Monash IVF's licences to operate are currently under review in Victoria after a Brisbane woman gave birth to a child that was not biologically hers.
Let's go live to Mimi Becker,
who is in Melbourne. Mimi, there's been an increase in dangerous complications.
So I'm going to leave them a little bit.
There has been, Lizzie, and of course this industry is under intense scrutiny at the moment, but it is required to report any adverse incidents across all clinics in the state. It's not just Monash IVF, but other providers as well. And there has been a big jump in the number of those incidents being reported to 149 incidents last year compared to just 93 the year before. But industry reports also show that there is a fear of underreporting of incidents still, despite that a larger number of adverse incidents. Now, this, of course, has all come to light after the Brisbane IVF clinic incorrectly implanted the embryo into a mother. That meant she did deliver a child that wasn't genetically hers. Victoria's regulator is now reviewing all of Monash IVF practices as their licences are up for review and set to be extended. That decision to come later this month. Lizzie?
Mimi Becker there, thank you. A Perth man who died while hiking in the Swiss Alps is being remembered by his family as someone who didn't just love life, but chased it. 33-year-old Stephen Ingram died instantly after a suspected fall last Sunday, with his loved ones now travelling to Zurich to say their final goodbyes.
The hikes that he did, and that's where he really took on a whole new life.
Every single weekend he was either out hiking or skiing, or if he wasn't doing that, he was planning his next trip.
A funeral service will take place in Switzerland before his body is flown back to Australia. Parts of southeast Queensland this morning cleaning up after heavy rainfall last night. Areas from the Gold Coast to north of Gympie all hit by thunderstorms. Redcliffe recording 94 millimetres in just over an hour. Improved conditions are forecast for today, with rain set to ease throughout the morning. Now, most of us have perhaps left our phone, keys, or even a wallet behind in an Uber after a big night, right? Well, others have forgotten much worse. The rideshare company has revealed some of the items in their Lost and Found report for 2024. Get this, making the list: mannequin head with human hair, gold teeth, pet turtle, boiled eggs.
Leonardo.
It gets worse. There's also been breast milk found. Divorce papers. And, I love this one, a taxidermied rabbit in the back seats.
A dead rabbit and a live turtle.
Yeah.
Get into it, Uber.
The hare and the tortoise. Uber says it comes down to one thing: the later the night, the looser the grip.
Yes.
That could have many meanings.
Taxidermied rabbit.
Yeah, but if you're going to go to the effort of taking a pet turtle in an Uber, like, how are you forgetting that? Isn't that a vital thing?
Turtle.
Turtle. I knew I forgot something.
Turtle again.
Again.
First though, Dan, a monster win for the Raiders last night.
Yeah, it was a goodie, Ali. NRL and the Raiders have registered their biggest win in 3 years. The Green Machine bringing up the half-century in Darwin's heat, 50 points to 12 over the Eels. Origin forward Hudson Young scored 2 tries as Canberra pummeled Parramatta, crossing the line 8 times.
They're really well balanced, and they're a side that I think, well, here we go. This is right. Strange, short, it's over. Got it away to Chris. The Green Machine at their best. It's a throwback to the days where Ricky was the hub.
Very professional, disciplined display. We haven't done that for a while, which I want new teams to sort of that. But they can do it because they stuck to the process.
Milka. Meanwhile in Perth, North Queensland made it 3 wins on the trot, 24 points to 16 over the Bunnies. Well, the unbeaten Lions showed exactly why they're the AFL's reigning premier. It's bringing me a lot of joy to read this, fighting back to beat the Bulldogs in a thriller at the rocking Norwood Oval in Adelaide. We may have to rename that Hipwood Oval after those heroics last night. Tom Grant is there. Tom, 5-0 for the Lions. Just Talk to me, brother. Come on. Join in whenever you're ready.
Yeah, they are flying, Dan. You've got to be happy about that. They are playing so well. And you know what? I think they've got another gear to go to too. Probably in third gear at the moment, but that's what good teams do. They win without having to play their absolute best. 33 points down at half time, 14 goals to 5 second half. That man you speak about, Eric Hipwood, 5 of those goals. He was sensational. Logan Morris booted 4. And the South Aussie, Zach Bailey, booted 3. That's where we are at the moment here at Nord. Another game today as well, Dan, which we're looking forward to. More than 9,000 fans packed in here yesterday and out at Barossa, which had their first game also. So it was really good that we got those 2 games out in the regions. Well, here in Nord, not that far out of the city, and then, of course, in the Barossa yesterday. So it was Brisbane going 5-0, as you say. Then last night, Essendon, they had a pretty good win against Melbourne, 39 points. Gee whiz, the Demons, are they struggling? 0-5 as opposed to 5-0, which the Lions are. Essendon, their second win of the season. And Carlton, a much better win yesterday also. Of course, then, we've got today 3 more games, including one here behind me, one in Barossa, and one at Adelaide Oval tonight to finish things. Port Adelaide against Hawthorn. I think everyone waiting to see what kind of fireworks we're going to get with Jack Ginnivan, Nick Watson, Ken Hinkley. Remember, we had that tete-a-tete in the semi-final last year, so a lot of expectation ahead of that game to round things out. Should be an absolute beauty. Perfect day again in Adelaide. Sun's just starting to rise now, so should be another great day over here, Dan.
Good on you, Tommy. I want to see the Jack Ginnivan style playing from you at some stage on the show today, all right, mate?
Let's bring in now former Victorian Liberal Party President Michael Kroger and former Labor Senator Graham Richardson. Great to see you both as always on a Wednesday. Look, I want to start with the polling that I just mentioned a moment ago, that the majority of voters now blame Anthony Albanese and his government for the skyrocketing power prices. Michael, this polling wasn't overwhelmingly positive for the coalition either. It had Labor just ahead on a 2-party preferred basis. But it seems that no voter can forget the Prime Minister's broken promise. So, what do you make of how big of an issue power prices will be at the election and just where it's up to overall right now?
I'd prefer to stay with Mr. Yassin, but anyway, I think you said it all, Shari. Look, this is a monstrous issue. It is the dominant policy issue that we remember from the 2022 election. The 275 promise, repeated 100 times. It was the dominant issue in the whole election, and the average working middle class voter saw that, believed that, and voted for Albanese accordingly. Apart from the fact there was a 9-year-old Liberal government, the most powerful political policy they had in that campaign was that promise. People believed it, acted on it, and it's coming back to bite him. And all this twisting and turning when every time Bowen or a minister's asked about the promise, it's Ukraine or something, people are furious that they were lied to, right? This was a con job. There was no proper modelling. This was just an advertising gimmick that Albanese was told to run with to get him over the line. He won in tens of thousands of votes. It's coming back to bite him, and I'd be absolutely certain the Liberal Party will be reminding everybody they were lied to at the last election, and don't believe it, Albanese next time.
Richard, do you think Albo would be better off just apologising to Australians, saying he got it wrong, because he can't pretend those comments weren't made. Everyone remembers that he did promise cheaper power prices, and even if they forget, like Michael just said, the coalition aren't going to let them forget it.
Does it happen?
I don't understand why politicians are always so afraid of saying sorry. I mucked that up, I'll now fix it up. I do not understand why they won't do that. It goes back, Keating would never do it.
You
You have to do it. The more everybody knows it's been a start-up, so why would you be hesitant to
You have to
admit
clean it up.
No, I think that's absolutely right. Just in terms of the overall polling, though, Michael, where do you
Clean
think
up these
Dutton is in the minute? Because,
terrorists, a bit
before
like the red.
this particular poll had the coalition
talking
ahead,
about
now
them
it's
in
got
New
Labor
Zealand.
ahead.
So I think Peter Dutton, the opposition, had a few flat weeks, and Labor probably have made up some ground. That's been apparent to me for a month. But I can see the wheel turning back again. I think Dutton's probably 51 to 52, somewhere around there. I still think he's on 72 seats. I still think he's going to win the election. The budget will not help Labor. The advertising campaign on that promise is not going to help Labor. And Shari, as I said before, he's got another huge issue, green preferences. Is he going to tell Labor voters to put the Greens second? I mean, this is a repulsive organisation now, the Greens, an extremist organisation that has smashed social cohesion in this country, as you've pointed out on many occasions. Is he going to ask Labor voters in McNamara to vote for the Greens ahead of the coalition? So he's still got to answer this question. You know, every time he's asked, he fobs it off to the national executive or the organisational wing. In the end, it's his decision. And he's got to confront that issue one way or the other. And I think we know what he's going to do, and that's going to be very bad news for him.
The Nightly has a front page story tonight, so their nightly edition tonight, where they're saying that the Prime Minister is even boasting of winning another 4 seats. So, Richo, it sounds like Albanese is getting overly confident. He's telling people at private dinners that he's actually going to pick up seats. He doesn't think Dutton can win.
I wouldn't write
They
him
do
off
that.
picking up seats.
Overconfident.
And if you're
Depends on the friends
leader,
around you. Sometimes they can
and
do
you
that.
are not an optimist, especially when you're in numbers
But it's like the
of
action kind of
supporters,
thing.
and you're a mug. So of course he's doing that. He has to project an image of confidence. He has to look like he is certain he'll win the election. If he doesn't look like that, then people will take advantage of it.
I don't think people like arrogance either, though, which is what it sounds like this boast was. But we'll come back to that. Now,
We'll come back.
Peter Dutton has put forward the idea that prospective migrants, would be tested on anti-Semitism in their citizenship test. Now, he suggested adding a question to the exam to ensure applicants are adequately screened. Now, the Prime Minister
Rose Bush.
immediately was
Stop hitting yourself,
dismissive
Rose Bush.
of
Stop
this
hitting yourself.
idea. Have a look at this.
Know what I mean by that, people? The rose bush is cutting itself
Another
with its
soap bubble.
thorns.
We'll see if it lasts till
I'm sorry.
you know a
It's your
couple
own
of,
deadly
a couple
self.
of hours away. Yesterday's didn't make it to lunchtime, so we'll wait to see what happens. The coalition have run a campaign complaining that too many Australians were making the citizenship pledge who'd been in the queue. Some of them for years.
Michael, first I think this is so insulting from the Prime Minister not to take this proposal seriously of stopping anti-Semites coming into the country. But I do think it would need to be more than just a question. There need to be some social
Me
media
got a
checking
big
as
loud
well,
miracle.
depending on which part of the world people were coming from.
You know, fast does not mean loud.
Of
But
course, I think it's preferable you don't have people
most
coming to
humans
this country
think.
to live permanently who hate Jews and who are brought up
Definitely
in
the
an education
immature
system
young
that taught
kids
to hate Jewish
think.
people. I don't
Guess
think
they're the
that's good
ones
for our
that are
country,
trying
and
to
I don't
wheel
think anywhere
in,
near a
kind of
majority
thing.
of Australians
Guess they're
think
the
that was
ones
a
that
good
are
idea.
doing it. You know
But
what I
I'll tell
mean?
you what's happened here. I'll tell you what's happened here. That was an
People
appalling
have asked me
comment
each
by
time
Albanese.
I've
That
talked
was a
about this
shocking
before.
comment.
Why
would
do you
say
have a
that? Tell you why I
V8
said that.
if you can't hear it?
Because on
Like,
Monday this
oh yeah,
week, Peter
I
Dutton at the
understand that.
Rising came out and
So there's reasons,
Tim
but
Wilson
it's certainly not to be going wop 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 wop.
and James Patterson
And
made an
cops pull you
announcement of
over more with that.
$35 million to help rebuild the
Don't
synagogue
want to
in
deal with
Melbourne.
that
Great
crap, and
announcement.
I'm not trying to
Albo came
look
out
good to
yesterday
any
and
young
promised
punk.
almost the same amount.
For
Very
someone
good
who
work
may
by the
be
Prime Minister
immature.
doing that.
If I want to be
But you
noisy,
just
I will be
imagine what's
noisy at
happened
certain
internally
appropriate
within the
areas.
Labor Party.
They
Tony
do it
Burke,
occasionally at
the
certain
large
times of
Muslim constituencies
anger
in
or
those western
feelings,
suburbs,
but
Sydney
it wouldn't be something
seats
I like to promote.
will have been
So I don't.
furious
You know what I
that
mean?
Albanese is giving $31.2 million to the Jewish community in Melbourne.
Been there, done that
They
kind
will
of thing.
have been furious. His phones
As well.
yesterday afternoon, or Tuesday and today, will have been ringing off with people complaining about his support for the Jewish community. So today he's come out and made this ridiculous contribution, somewhere in order to sort of balance things up a bit.
People can choose what they want to choose.
I've done follow Dutton on this stuff. I've got my own views, and
The
I
powerful
don't think
show.
we should do this. It's a soap bubble. Right? I think that's what's happened here.
Bubble
He's got
bed.
huge flak in the last 2
Hey,
days for
remember they put
helping
another clip of that?
donate money to rebuild the synagogue.
My nieces went through a
That was
bubble butt
fire
moment back in the day.
burnt to the
Statue
ground
for
in
them.
Jewish
some
hating
parts.
racists,
Yeah.
racist extremists. So he's done the right thing, and no doubt Tony Burke and others, I'm not saying Burke specifically, but people around the left of the Labor Party and the Muslim community have been furious with him ever since Monday. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, let's turn to Trump, Russia, and Ukraine. We know that the president had a 2-hour phone call with Putin. Look, he managed to extract some concessions, but it clearly wasn't the deal he was hoping for because Putin said no to a 30-day ceasefire. He
did agree to stop targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure effective immediately, but then there were reports that he resumed targeting the infrastructure. So, Richo, do you have confidence that
He did agree,
Trump
but
is
then
going to
he
reach an
resumed.
agreement that doesn't
Who
involve
does that?
giving
I know
Russia
someone that does that
more
legally.
Ukrainian land?
I'll change.
I
Nah.
never had much confidence in anything.
I'll only do it if I get a benefit. You can't tell me to do the right thing.
I think he's one of the
Make me
worst
feel bad.
scrubs I've ever known in
Sorry.
politics. And so I worry about Trump's looking friendly occasionally towards him. I don't think we should be
Going
friendly
with
to
the
this
weaving.
fella at all. This guy killed people. Personally, let alone, we're using the apparatus of the state. And so you don't admire that. You criticise it and you condemn it.
Well, I understand the tactic of not
Dylan,
criticising
it's a big
Putin while
thing
you're
you gotta
trying to
get through,
get him
isn't
to agree to a ceasefire or a peace deal. But, Michael, at this point, and look, I hope more
Some
than anything
sins
that Trump can get
are
a deal
unforgivable.
done here. But at
You write
this
down in a
point,
list. What's your
doesn't
sins
look
that are
promising.
unforgivable
What do
and
you
why?
think?
And then you'll know. And preach
You
to
don't know
people
fully
not to
what's
do
happening
such
behind
things.
the scenes. I think that's
Say
the
the
first
worst.
thing to say. But to the extent that we know
Because
from
it's hard
the
to feel.
public
One
statements
death,
made by both
accidents,
leaders
certain
on the
things
details of the
can be
conversations,
forgivable.
and they've been picked over
But
by
knowing
many
that
journalists
you
who
did wrong and you
include
continue and you've
Putin
been
and
forgiven and you
Trump.
continue,
My worry
can
is
be
that he's got this
unforgivable.
completely wrong. Instead
A
of
lot of
hitting on
those.
Zelensky first, he should have been hitting
It's
on
the bad
Putin
guy you got to
first.
let go off
I
the
mean,
cliff.
Zelensky was
He
an
wants to
easy
pull you
ticket
down
to agree
constantly.
because the country's been
Unforgivable
smashed.
thing.
The first port of call should have been with Putin. Now it looks like on the surface, it's looked like Putin can just sit there month after month after month. He'll still be president long after Trump's gone. And so he can wait him out as the Chinese and the North Koreans waited Trump out in 2020.
It's a way, it's
He
a
can
war
wait him
tactic.
out. And the longer it goes, the worse it is for Trump. Because don't forget again, this was one of his major campaign
Trump can
election
make things
promises.
worse, like
that he fix it in the
what
day,
they
man,
did
he
in
fix it in a few months.
Vietnam.
If he can't
As
fix this
certain
on
areas can
reasonable
weigh it out
terms,
and they
it's
can't.
very
And you know
damaging
the
to Trump,
outcome of
and
Vietnam,
it
or why they
doesn't read so
what happened
so
about
far.
weighing
The
things
issue
out.
is that Putin, of
Who
course,
won that?
knows that
The
Trump
Vietnamese.
desperately wants to get this done. But, we haven't given up faith.
Correct.
We'll see where this ends. All right, Michael Kroger, Graham Richardson, great to see you, as always, on a Wednesday.
See you later. Vietnamese. What do you reckon of that saying? Vietnamese. The Vietnamese.
Business Weekend with Ross Greenwood.
Oh,
Hi
business.
there and welcome to
We're all
Business.
sick of hearing that crap, eh? I don't need to hear about gun down. Let's see what the politicians are going to say. Yeah.
Thank you
There
very
you
much,
go.
Mr. Speaker. Well, to Australians listening tonight, thank you very much for your time.
We're listening.
To say in determining the future of
And
our
no worries.
country. We live literally in the best country in the world, and we're the beneficiaries of what our forebears have built and defended. We love this country because it has forged us into a remarkable people. We're compassionate, we're stoic, we're fair, and we're quietly patriotic. We cherish this country because it affords opportunities like no other. But only, and I stress this point, if we're governed well. When Australia is governed badly, dreams and ambitions become beyond reach. And that's what's happened during the last 3 years of the Albanese government. In my travels across the country, Australians tell me that they're working hard, but they're not getting ahead. In Perth, a mum in a grocery store, in tears, told me how her husband and children couldn't keep their heads above water with the bills stacking up.
The question is, who was in politicians at that time?
Gone up by about 300%. In Victoria,
Who's been in politicians? How do you feel about the outcomes of the arguments you have? Pretty much how I can put it.
In Brisbane, I listened to
He's argued too much, nothing happens, and it's sad, isn't it?
who have moved back in with
So
their
perhaps we should get people who don't argue so much, I think.
even though both
It's one of the
were working
main
overtime.
keys.
Now, such stories have now become
Hopefully
commonplace
it'll
across
come
our
to an
country.
end.
Stories of rent and mortgage
Hopefully
stress,
they can show, once
stories
again, the
of
kids
power shopping
how to do a
and
debate
insurance bills going
without
through.
arguments, how to get
Stories of
debates
home
done.
ownership being out
Show
of reach
show
for so
your
many,
kids
and
that.
stories of it being
Instead of having teachers explain things to us and then tell us we're not doing it right.
And stories of crime
You know
on
what
our
I mean?
streets. For so many
Set an
Australians,
example.
aspiration has turned to anxiety.
Should always start from the top.
To pessimism, and national confidence to national uncertainty. The truth is, Australians can't afford 3 more years of the Albanese government.
The truth is, Australians can't afford too much of any more use of any bullshit, really.
More than others in recent history. It is a sliding doors moment for our nation. A returned Albanese government in any form
No country,
won't just
dude,
be another 3
is a worse countries than us at the moment.
More economic mistakes will take a lot longer to recover from. Setbacks will be set
We
in
can all help
stone,
each
and
other, too.
prosperity will be damaged for decades to come. But you have the power
What are the
to
poor?
change the
They're going on about iRobot. What a robot two together? Why do the poor hang together?
And you have the
How do the
opportunity
poor
to get our
uplift
country
themselves to
back on track.
inspire themselves
You can do that
to
by
get
voting
somewhere?
for your Liberal
Can the
National
rich do what
candidate
the
so
poor
that
does in that area?
you, Dutton
Why
Coalition
do the
government,
poor
can be elected?
can still laugh and
And at this election,
have a good time with their
the choice
family,
could be clearer.
even though they've gone through
Tonight,
hell?
I'll outline the choice Australians face at this election and our plan to fix Labor's mess. We have a positive plan to deliver. A stronger economy with lower inflation, cheaper energy, affordable homes,
Why is it
quality
that the
healthcare,
culture,
and safer communities.
like
A plan
Thailand
to
and
help
stuff
you
like that,
and your families.
that have had a
A plan
culture
to
of
bring
a
about
lot of
a
hard
stronger,
work, a lot of
safer,
bullying, a lot of
and
slavery
better
to their
Australia.
culture, a lot of
A plan to
demanding?
usher in more confidence,
Why do they
resilient,
laugh
and
when they're
self-reliant
upset? Is that a psychological
people right across the
outcome
And we need
passed
to
through
accept that we
genetically?
live in a more dangerous and destructive world.
Things to think about, eh?
And to these ends tonight, I will announce
Is
new
it a good thing or a
policies that
bad
the
thing
coalition government
that they do
will
such
implement.
things?
Tonight, I commit a coalition government to the following.
Does it confuse people
We will
that don't
introduce
understand?
4 critical pieces of legislation on the first sitting day in the next Parliament. 1, the Energy Price Reduction Bill. 2, the Lower Immigration and More Homes for Australians Bill. The Keep Australians Safe Bill. And the Guaranteed Funding for Health, Education and Essential Services Bill. This is my signal to the Australian people of what my priorities will be in government. In his 4th budget, like the previous 3, the Treasurer again painted a rosy picture of the economy. But Australians aren't silly. Your bills tell the true story of Labor's cost of living crisis. And here's the facts of the Albanese government's economic record. Rents are up by 18%. Housing is up by 14%. Groceries up by a staggering 30%. Electricity is up by 32%. And insurance
Revenue's
is
up.
for many households and businesses.
How many
by
percentage there you
35%.
reckon? Depends on the area.
Australians have experienced the longest household recession and the worst collapse in living standards in our country's history. Under Labor,
Oh, I
interest
can hear
rates
the
have
buddy.
gone up 12 times,
About
but only been
cool little
cut
buddy.
once. And
Hey,
that's
mate.
higher for longer
Birds are
compared to other
respectful.
comparable nations.
When they see you, they like to have a chat.
This budget makes clear
And they can see
that
from a
Labor
distance.
was only able to deliver 2
They know sooner or
surpluses,
later run a man after a little bit.
piggybacking off the former coalition government's strong economic management, as well as record commodity price windfalls.
Yeah.
And now the outlook is one of deficits as far as the
But he's been looking after himself a lot lately, which is pretty cool.
Labor peddled
Sort of miss
the line
him,
that
but
they inherited $1 trillion
it's like having
of debt.
it's like being a parent
Yet
and they're
in the
like,
budget
they're
papers
looking
that we
after
saw on Tuesday night,
themselves.
they confirmed that the Labor
But not the
Party
pigeons.
burdened
They're like,
Australians
oh, we don't
with
care.
$1 trillion of
Hey,
debt
but you're
as
over in
of
the
next
tree
year.
over there. It's like a big front tree.
Tuesday's
Hearing.
budget was one for
So
the
it
next
sounds like
5 weeks,
coming from.
one for the next 5 years. It was a shameless election voting exercise, not a
Back
plan for the
again.
country's future.
Finish the Sunday.
It was about
Kebabs.
saving Prime Minister Albanese,
But on the
not about
paralysis.
you, and certainly not about safeguarding our nation. Jim Chalmers' so-called tax cut top-up is simply a tax cut cop-out. It's a cruel hoax. Now, Labor will spend $17 billion of taxpayers' money to give you back 70 cents a day in 15 months' time. And yet a family with a typical mortgage under this government is $50,000.
They're laughing about. You guys are part of the issue of why a lot of issues have been happening.
To be honest,
I guess you failed us last time to convince us then. You know what I mean?
we think there's a better way to provide assistance to Australians.
That's what I say to the ones that's been in there for a while.
We will provide immediate cost of
The longer
living.
you've been in there and there's been more
relief for
issues,
Australians.
the more shameful you should be at your job. or be speaking about why that's still happening and why it's still repeat. It makes no sense to me why some conversations only happen at certain times.
With one car filling up once a week, that's a savings of about $14 a week, or around $700 over the year. For a household with 2 cars,
See, I'd never use taxpayers' money or my own money to give people lower fuel costs, because they're going to need that to help try to fix things for real, right? And make a point of view, right? You can just speak about it. And I'd rather use that money and time and effort to go speak to people to make sure it stays at a certain cost. Right? Just fix it for real. There's no use doing that, because when you do that, right, you still got to go fix it for real. You know what I mean? You still got to go fix it. Or you don't. You just say it to get in. You know what I mean? And that's sad, because you hear that one wrong. Make things look good at the time, no? I've seen that plenty of times. Does people still go for that one? Don't know. Marketing will tell, right? Sponsors and volunteers. And then it shows what your collective is. And that happens. These are what you put out. Mate, our outcomes of wars are what our collective puts out. That's all there is to it. Don't make it, you leave to another collective. Or be by yourself.
I just want to address each of those aspects.
Find out what the best rules are when you're away from people. You know, that's what I've been looking at lately. It's like, what's the best when you're away from people? I understand if you're around people, this country might be better. They have better rules to get away with things, and people give you issues and stuff like that. But what's the best country when you're away from people, right? Here in Australia, if you're away from people, you still can get in trouble if you need to come in town or something like that. If you have a weapon, right? Of self-defense, or if they come out and see you and see that you have one, even though you haven't even been near them, they can come and grab you and take you away from the place that you felt safe at and go throw you in a little bucket because their collective want to feel an ego of their law, right? And so when it comes to freedom, you find out what country allows you to have that freedom when you're alone, because that's when you know you got true freedom, true protection. What protection can you have, and what protection have you got for when you're alone and shit goes down, right? Here in Australia, not any. Right? You can be out in the bush and not have guns and not have all these things, and out in the bush and the bad guy will get it, will do it, and you're just a plucked chicken, right? That's how I see it. I'm like, well, bugger that, you can't be truly safe here. But at least in America, you can get a gun, you have rules to get a gun, you stick by the rules, you can get a gun. Huh? Then you can go out in the bush and keep yourself protected, as they do over there all the time. Even though there's other people with guns around, there's always going to be people with guns, there's always going to be wars. Look at Gaza, they didn't expect an army to come in. Huh? There's always going to be armies. Even they will shoot at people like trigger happy. So, if you've got no gun, you're going to be trigger happy shot at. Right? They want to be trigger happy at a person with a gun, well, they might find out they might get shot back too. Right? At least God gives them a punishment back. The other way, when you don't learn anything, well, God goes, well, you're not learning anything. If you allow, then you're not learning. Right? That's how God looks at it. It's a collective point of view too. Is that you're allowing, so when China comes in, perhaps, they're saying, right, so when China comes in, you get a beta or some other country, right, and they're falling out of the sky and they're shooting down, they go, and you're running for your lives and screaming, you can try to go grab your kitchen knife and throw it at them, and your cops get shot down, you see your cops coming down the road and they last like 7 measly minutes, right, and then you're all just getting shot like chickens, right? What would you be thinking when that happens? You let me know in comments. You can comprehend that. What would you be thinking? You might be thinking, shit, I wish we didn't have such a stupid collective mainly here, and went through a scout course and had some brains and some balls in certain ways and don't fear everything and every little animal, right? And we would have had guns, right? That's what happened back in the barbaric days when the barbarians went and attacked England, right? And you see it in the movies, and they're just running and grabbing their crosses, and they had nothing to defend themselves because back then they thought they only needed God, but then they got a point shown, right? And God didn't go, shit, go hide your goods and stuff like that. Is that what you think about? Just your presents, right? And then they're all getting slaughtered. And you go, God's like, shit. You should at least learn some self-defense. You know what I mean? Is that not meant to be learnt? You see the point? And so you get your outcome. And then they're going, why, God, why? He's going, well, why didn't you learn some self-defense? If you did at least half, you might meet halfway. You think about these cultures and what they were, they didn't even go halfway. Right? They just won it. You see? But anyway, now I'm just going to pop this weed up.
At the very centre of Labor's cost of living crisis is, of course, the skyrocketing cost of energy. And that's due, of course, to Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen's reckless renewable.
Don't even know if that's still recording. You might not be.
As every
Said that
Australian
before.
knows, energy
Slapping
is
away
the
and then
economy.
go over there and like,
Australians are paying some of the highest power prices.
recording,
in the world.
nothing.
Indeed, up to 3 times more than comparable economies. And the Albanese government has broken its core election promise when it comes to energy. Your electricity bill hasn't gone down by $275, as Labor promised on 97 occasions. The Prime Minister and the Treasurer refuse even to mention that word, even though they look.
What do I do when it comes to energy? When you had the COVID problem and we got extra money, I got solar panels and batteries. While a lot of my friends were pissing up and going out, which they were saying to do to help the economy. But I help the economy by buying wisely. Some people help the economy by buying a game machine. Yeah, they help the economy, but I help the economy the same way by spending money, but wisely, you see. When the government gave out the money, they just give it out. They don't explain to how you should have been spending it, and if we see you're not spending it that way, you know, they should have gave out the money where you could have had little cards, or you can only spend it on certain items like America does. But they don't. They just go give it out and go, oh, Australia's no best country in the world. You know what I mean?
Supermarket shelves.
But
I
now,
want businesses to be able to hire more staff.
one of many things you can do.
Pay every increasing power bills.
But as a parent would tell me back in the day, the worst thing you can do to the kid is just give them the money and not tell them what they should buy it. Or at least explain what they should do with it. You know what I mean? Like the parents when you go go-kart and all that, and you get your pocket money and they go, you got to save some of that. No, because the government told me spending is good for the economy. I'm going to use that line at this time. I learned that from the government too. What next debate? Right? And then if you start talking to me that I'm wrong, and I walk away and go, no, I got that straight from Albanese. I'm not saying Albanese said that, but you know what I mean?
The coalition understands what Labor wants.
And go tell them, talk to the hand, and go, or talk to the elbow. Right? See you later.
The energy crisis, and therefore your pain will continue. Bills will keep going up because the cost of putting out 28,000 kilometres of new transmission lines will just be passed on to Australians. Our energy grid will become more unstable.
Sooner or later, you've got to upgrade certain areas, but does it need to? Remember I talked about my stepdad saying about upgrades, and you shouldn't just go buy things. There's an ego on something, certain reasons why. Keep up with the rest, because the other's going, don't you have the latest iPhone? He doesn't have the latest iPhone, everybody. Let's have a laugh. Aren't they so nice? Hey, buddy. Yeah, you're still up there. You see me poking up.
This plan will prioritise domestic gas supply, address shortfalls, and
Oh,
reduce
boom.
energy prices for Australians.
That's why I raised one.
This is all about ensuring Australian gas is for Australians. We will immediately introduce an East Coast gas reservation.
Australian gas is for Australians first, like every country should say with their energy. And then, if we do well and other countries are struggling, we get to make more or store more. It depends on how much we make and store and how long we can. For other countries to make more money, to save us doing things ourselves. That's what sharing and caring is.
First and foremost, for our people.
Woohoo!
Gas sold on the domestic market will be decoupled from overseas markets to protect Australia from international price shocks. And this will drive down new wholesale domestic gas prices from around $14 per gigajoule to under $10 per gigajoule. And this is just the start. We will immediately audit development-ready projects with a focus on the southern states. We will fast-track a decision on Western Australia's Northwest Shelf project. The government has delayed a decision on that project conveniently until the 31st of May, which happens to be after the election. So good luck.
When they say here, do they mean they're going to get somewhere? They're getting somewhere?
Environmental Defenders Office.
What do you reckon? Or it's an ego thing?
Which has obstructed
Oh,
projects.
this is what we want.
Yeah. By
What do you reckon?
reinstating a $300 million
Let me know in comments.
strategic basin plan and include gas in the
If you put up that
capacity
anymore,
investment scheme.
is this thing still running?
We will invest $1 billion
Has got other crap on it.
into a critical
Oh,
gas
we're still running. Look at
infrastructure
that.
fund and increase gas pipeline and storage capacity.
And storage
We will
compass
put in
too.
place use it or lose it stipulations for gas drilling companies, so offshore gas fields are not locked up for years.
Because if it wasn't still running, we may have to go get it.
Gas trigger to safeguard supply. This plan, Mr. Speaker, will lower wholesale gas prices, which will flow across the economy. Our national gas plan is expected to push prices down for new gas sales to below $10 per gigajoule, compared to the $14 in the market today. Energy prices will always be lower under a coalition government. A coalition government will also secure our nation's energy security for decades to come and over the longer term. We will join the other 19 top economies in the world in adopting proven zero emissions nuclear power. This is one of the most visionary and necessary policies put forward in our country's history. It was supported by Bob Hawke and it's supported by John Howard and other leaders of our nation.
Johnny Howard.
And it will
Shit, I was
underpin
listening to
our
that
energy
the other day.
security for the next century.
He hasn't changed a bit.
Our plan has been independently costed at 44% cheaper than Labor's plan. Labor has never been able to dispute that outcome. And what it means is that there's savings of $263 billion for Australians. If a plan is cheaper, electricity prices will be cheaper, as fewer costs, of course, are passed on to consumers. Nuclear power's high yield of energy and small footprint means that there's no need to carpet our national parks, prime agricultural land, and coastlines with industrial scale renewables. The Coalition has the only energy policy which protects our environment and safeguards the livelihoods of regional Australia. Mr. Speaker, the exorbitant cost of energy is one reason why a record 29,000 small businesses have gone insolvent under Labor. It's one reason why there's been a threefold increase in the number of manufacturers who have closed under Mr. Albanese's watch. But another reason is Labor's excessive regulation and interference in the economy. Sectors critical for our economy, like mining, manufacturing, forestry, fishing and agriculture, have been crippled by Labor's weaponisation of environment, industry, IR and cultural heritage laws. And we're seeing industries simply pack up and go offshore and international partners withdraw investment from our country. For all of Anthony Albanese's talk of the future made in Australia, the opposite is actually the fact. Less is being made in Australia under this government's watch, and more is being made abroad. The last 3 years,
As soon as they realise that the future's made in the world, the better. The future is made in the world. Bloody hell.
Industries and businesses will continue to collapse in record numbers or simply move operations offshore, which means that we lose those jobs. Under the Coalition, we will build a stronger economy, not only by getting power prices down, but also by ripping up as much red and green tape as possible. Tonight I commit to removing
No, it's red and blue.
burdens where we can, where there's duplication across local, state and federal government during a first
To salvage
term
half of these
coalition
batteries,
government.
at least, or more. Because one of the units went to the end, it started saying it's going flat. There are 20 of the batteries, and 21 to make up one of these battery kits. And the other unit had a malfunction, so it was, still charging full. Got some life in it, and it just malfunctioned. It says it's full, but it won't work. So I pulled them apart. I'm just getting a tester and test them all out. And something to be able to fix them up a bit if they need to. See what I can sell. Have a chat about it. A couple of weeks.
Taxpayers' money wisely in a manner which has an economic
Well, that's early.
a way in which it generates productivity and can attract new investment. And that's better for you, for your family, and it'll create jobs for your children and grandchildren. And we will curtail union militancy in workplaces. We will revert to a simple definition of a casual worker, the corrupt and disgraced CFMEU, which has donated $11 million to the Labor Party, that in turn has seen the Labor Party turn a blind eye to them and their illegal conduct. It will be deregistered. And the construction industry watchdog will be restored.
That's what I was just talking about before. That intimidation bullying.
New anti-racketeering laws will be legislated. And a dedicated Australian Federal Police-led task force will tackle criminal elements
There's a way to intimidate the truth, right? Threaten the truth, but threatening blackmail. Yeah, we're going to do this. You don't. It's not a good thing at all.
And not even commenting in relation to it. It was a disgrace, and it was a disgrace
It's a disgrace
to happen. And it's a common practice from the CFMEU. Reviving growth, Mr. Speaker, also means having the back of small business, including tax relief. We've got tax relief coming for small business. We will increase the instant asset write-off from $1,000 under this government to $30,000, and we're going to make that arrangement ongoing. We'll provide a deduction of up to $20,000 per year for small businesses for business-related meal expenses, which is also a much-needed shot in the arm for struggling cafes, restaurants and pubs. If your kids or grandkids work in a local cafe or in a local pub or club, this will see them get more hours and have more secure employment. It will allow a local real estate agency or a builder to take staff to a local cafe to celebrate a big sales event or simply to say thank you to their hardworking employees. It creates jobs and it supports the struggling hospitality sector. I want small businesses to be taking risks, calculated risks, not shutting up shop. Reviving growth and preparing our economy for the future also means supporting skills development. Tonight I announce that the coalition government will set a target of 400,000 apprentices and trainees in training across Australia. Our plan is to restore targeted and proven incentive payments for employers to hire and train an apprentice. We will provide small and medium businesses with $12,000 to support them to put on a new apprentice or trainee in critical skills areas for the first 2 years of their training. We will have a particular focus in the building and construction sector. Mr. Speaker, addressing Labor's cost of living crisis and energy crisis is just the start. In its first 2 years, the government brought in 1 million people through the migration program. That's 70% more migrants than in any 2-year period in Australia's history. And of course, there'll be consequences. And yet, after 3 years in power, the Albanese government hasn't delivered a single additional new home built under its failed housing policies. Australians are generous in welcoming people, but they want migration to be sustainable and the government to be in control of it. Labor is neither in control of migration, nor has it kept migration at sustainable levels, and Australians know it. I don't want young Australians locked out of the property market or having to rely on the bank of mum and dad. I want to see fewer Australians homeless and more Australians in homes. Mr. Speaker, under Labor, migration will continue to put pressure on housing, on infrastructure and on services. But under the coalition, we will cut the migration
It's like they try to
free
please the
up
speaker.
housing and restore the great Australian dream.
I get that in the courtroom, but it's not about pleasing the speaker, though.
By 25%. We will ban foreign investors and temporary residents from purchasing existing Australian homes.
Speaker represents the people.
We will set stricter caps on foreign students to relieve stress on rental markets, and we will invest $5 billion in essential infrastructure to get stalled housing projects up and going, and it's going to create 500,000 new homes. We'll allow for first home buyers to access up to $50,000 of their super for a home deposit because it's better to get into a home sooner. When a government doesn't have any achievements to speak about, which is the reality for this government, it resorts to smears and scare campaigns. There's no greater sign of the Albanese government's desperation that its Medicare campaign
Too much to laugh about. I wouldn't be laughing there, you know.
But while Labor peddles falsehoods or remind Australians of the facts, on this government's watch, bulk billing nationally has fallen by 11%. There's 41 million fewer bulk billing episodes with GP services under this government. And more than 270 GP practices have closed under this government's watch. Australians should never have to choose between seeing a doctor or paying
So
their
if they've got a high probability that they say something will go and it won't. And that's sad. Of a lot of things that you talk about. Just like Albanese with the say that electricity prices will go down.
To work as GPs to address the current shortages at your local clinic. We will boost Medicare bulk billing. We will invest in hospitals, especially in high population growth areas where there's the biggest strain on services. We will guarantee cheaper medicines and lower the pharmaceutical benefit scheme co-payment to $25, and we'll invest $500 million into women's health. And we'll double the subsidised mental health sessions from 10 to 20 and make this arrangement permanent. Many young Australians require access to mental health services in any given year. And tonight I announced that a coalition government will invest an additional $400
No, but they'll definitely make sure.
into youth mental
They'll
health
make sure that they feel good, eh?
expand the remit
What do you
of the
reckon?
National Centre for Excellence in Youth Mental Health, which I created in 2014 into a national
They'll make sure
institute.
that they're
We
satisfied.
will boost regional services and expand treatment to Australia at the forefront of youth mental health treatment in the world. We will continue
And
to
all their
support
friends.
the world-leading Medical Research Future Fund,
What pattern is that?
which I established as the then Health Minister. There is now more than $20 billion in that fund, and it's providing support to our specialists, all
We have a mower.
to scientists, to researchers, to labs, all of them working on incredible projects. And that funding will continue to provide them with support in Australians with
Cool
hope.
thing about living around flats.
Mr. Speaker, in my
You don't have to
travels
listen
across
to
the country,
mowers too long. Not much
Australians
better.
tell me they've never been more worried about crime and division in our community. It started with the Prime Minister's Voice referendum, which sought to divide our country by ancestry and race.
Exactly.
It led to vacuum of leadership following the crime wave in Alice Springs and the anti-Semitism on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. All too often, the Prime Minister is too weak, too late, and too equivocal.
It's funny how you hear him saying they're trying to divide us by race when we're a multicultural country. Saying that for how long? What did all that mean then? If we're not, is that another mistake? Whoops, we're sorry. Now just take it, everybody, right? Otherwise we'll put the cost up. If you don't take it, you make us upset and we'll put your run up. Things like that. I know what they're doing with the cigarette. Sorry, you better fix your problem quick and we'll sack you more. Sorry. It's alright, I won't be around. I'll have a new friend. You'll laugh and joke and go, yeah, you're just like me in another way. My boy is just like me. Cats in the cradle and the silver spoon. There goes Buddy, screaming soon. Hey, buddy. I don't know if they can hear you. There's noise going on. And I have low 4-man mobile phone. The best of today's technology, a format. Yes, they put that in. And it ain't great.
Every Australian should be equally treated. We will work with states and territories to develop national uniform knife laws. We will toughen bail laws to stop domestic violence offenders. We will again stop the boats just as we did in 2013, and we will again deport dangerous non-citizen criminals. Just as I did as Home Affairs Minister in cancelling 6,300 visas of murderers and sex offenders and drug traffickers, something this government hasn't continued. We will again invest in the feds to play our part as a credible partner to deter aggression and to maintain peace. We've already committed to
Right.
$3 million in additional funding to reinstate the fourth squadron that the F-35 Joint Strike Fighters cancelled by Labor.
Cool.
Our plan is to energise our domestic defence industry and to retool the ADF with asymmetric capabilities to deter a larger adversary. Mr Speaker, during the election campaign, we will announce our significant funding commitment to defence, a commitment which, unlike Labor's, will be commensurate with the challenges of our times. The Prime Minister of our country, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister for Defence, tells Australians regularly that we live in the most precarious period, the most dangerous period since the end of the Second World War. What leader of the country says that and then doesn't do anything about it?
Yeah. Exactly. That's a good one.
We will provide support to the Australian Defence Force to keep us safe today and into generations ahead.
That was a good one.
Time we will know stand. That starts, of course.
Well, I did. I took some selfies. What do you reckon? Me and him were cool. It's like the old Hitler thing with Russia. You know, there's that cool. What happened there? You let me know if you know about history.
And common sense. Mr Speaker, this election is as much about leadership as it is about policy. And the choice is clear at the next election. I will be a strong leader with a steady hand. I will make the tough decisions, not shirk them. I will put the national interest first. I will lead with conviction, not walk both sides of the street. And I have real-life experience to demonstrate it. As a veteran of the police force who dedicated 9 years to protecting Australians, especially women and children, a small business owner who started and successfully ran businesses, someone who came from a working-class background and knows the value of hard work and the aspiration that drives Australians. A parent, along with my wife, Kiralee, who understands the family is the most important unit in our society. I want to give a shout-out to Kiralee tonight, who's just had surgery on her wrist and is at home watching with Rebecca, Harry and Tom, unless Maps clashes with this broadcast. I've been an assistant treasurer in our country. I've been a former Minister for Health. I've been a Minister for Immigration, Minister for Home Affairs and Minister for Defence, which was an enormous honour. I lead a united and incredibly capable team. We're ready to govern. We're ready to deliver a stronger economy with lower inflation, cheaper energy, affordable homes, quality healthcare and safer communities. And we will govern with respect for the views, values and vision of everyday Australians. Australians are worse off under the Albanese government, and Australians cannot afford 3 more years of this bad Labor government. I say to Australians tonight, at this election, you can make the right choice. A better choice for you, a better choice for your family, and a better choice for your country. Together, let's build a stronger, safer and better Australia, and let's together get our country back on track.
And why do they have to get it back on track, everybody? Because sorry we failed you with our arguments and couldn't get it right till now. Kind of thing. What do you reckon? I'll buy that for $1.
Yeah, that's $3.
What do you reckon? A little better? That's what I was first time.
It made it look like an arch.
Yeah. Some of these will fall off and do it now. They're falling off already anyway. Do it now. Right. Let's see what I can see.
That sunflower over there looks completely dead.
A bit of a vision.
Oh.
See the God goes with you.
Oh, sure.
God goes like we work with each other. If you cut the sheets and force it more and stuff like that. Boom! And it's only for me. It's for, you know, this one can be cool. Worry about things like ooh.
Hey,
Hey,
I'm gonna start dinner.
so that's it. Big thing that can pick up.
Upgrade your shave.
As long as I have things hidden. You're like, what's going on? I don't want to be recorded. Oh! I do tell them when I do a lot. Boy, come in.
United Rentals is leveling the equipment hire and rental playing field, giving you more options and better solutions for shoring, earth moving, containers, and worksite facilities for your job site. Get the right solution from United Rentals. Call 13HIRE.
To press conference where Michaela Cash and opposition leader Peter Dutton are speaking. Basically running the construction industry in Australia.
I got a shower after this.
Australians, mum and dad taxpayers are paying up to 30% more for their publicly funded infrastructure. That's the hospitals, the roads, and the schools. And quite frankly, what we saw last night in relation to the allegations against women was utterly disgusting. Well, quite frankly, enough is now enough. Mr Albanese, as a weak Prime Minister who is completely beholden to the CFMEU, has shown that he will not take action that will properly address this problem. Enough is enough.
That's what I was doing about before.
Government
Who will? Who
we are
will
going to
properly
announce
address
today
something?
a suite of actions that will quite literally
And how will they
kill
guarantee
organised crime
that? That's what
where
you
it
want to hear.
hurts and break their business model with the CFMEU. The first thing we will do, and we call on Mr Albanese to work with us because we can do this next week when the Parliament sits, is to once and
They
for
could
all deregister
do a lot of things
the
next week.
CFMEU. Mr Albanese has shown by putting it into administration that he will take the weakest possible response possible. It is almost laughable to see government ministers out there today saying that administration is working. Well, if administration is working, God help the Australian people. God help women on construction sites, but more than that, why are thousands and thousands of dollars still exchanging hands on these construction sites around Australia? You need to comprehensively, once and for all, deregister the CFMEU, but also at the same time ensure that any official that has indulged in law breaking is never again allowed to hold office in a registered organisation or go anywhere near a work site and represent the workers.
What do they mean by law breaking too?
We also need urgently to
They
put
stole
back
the
in
milk
place
from the bar?
the building industry regulator, the ABCC.
You cannot be in
which
politician.
Mr Albanese, as you all know, his first act of government was to do exactly what the CFME wanted him to do, and that was to get rid of the building industry watchdog. Again, we will work with Mr Albanese next week to urgently reinstate the building industry watchdog. But we will also smash organised crime right at its very heart. We will introduce laws that will allow the police to target the kingpins and the bosses. The laws that we currently have in Australia only allow the police to target the individual themselves who have committed the crime. And as we all know, when it comes to kingpins, when it comes to bosses of organised crime, they often don't get their hands dirty. These laws have worked well in the United States and America. Decades ago, they were introduced to combat the mafia influence, in particular in labour organisations across the United States.
So we will introduce these laws which will allow our police to target a criminal organisation that has itself been involved in a pattern of law breaking. We are going to break open the business model and smash it that organised crime has been running with the CFMEU in this country. We're going to give the construction industry back to the Australian taxpayer because ultimately this is all about mum and dad. And the money,
It's all about mum and dad.
They are paying for infrastructure in this country.
Thank you very much, Michaelia. The CFMEU is not a union. It is a criminal enterprise.
It is a criminal
its business model
enterprise.
is not like that of reputable unions like the Nurses Federation or the Australian Workers Union, who take fees from their members to represent their interests. Their business model is much more like the mafia. They take protection money from building sites and building companies in order to keep the peace. The primary beneficiaries of this corrupt model are underworld figures like Nick Gatto and organised outlaw motorcycle gangs like the Comancheros and the Rebels. And it is Australian and Victorian taxpayers who bear the brunt of this business model. Not just in their higher taxes or increased costs of infrastructure projects.
Hear about the Chinese people in America, Chinatown. Well, Sucker, I feel sorry for him in a way. He should just go back to China, I guess. Or work as an American and sell American stuff. He doesn't know what to do. You know what you can do, mate? Chinese, mate? Oh, if I was you, more likely this war is going to keep up. It'd be a miracle if it suddenly goes away, right? So it's going to stay for a little while. Might be a miracle, right? If not, you'll make some money still. It's a new start, I guess. But what I'll do is put up your prices to double now. That's what the businesses would. It's called a loophole. So fewer people do it now that it's a certain price. Now they can put the price up. They do it all the time. They haven't got more fuel. As soon as they know the fuel people, fuel stations, because I've put up prices for them before. As soon as they find out, they go there and quickly change the prices so they can make some more money. Otherwise, they'll lose money. Right? Sometimes they lose money in certain areas like that, but they mostly make money quickly before with old stock. If they've got any old stock, they'll make some money. They can go the other way around when it goes the other way. But usually that's what they do. They quickly change things to make money.
To bust this business model once and for all, deliver safer work sites for Australians, and affordable infrastructure projects that aren't blown out by paying bikies $10,000 a week, not even to show up.
So,
James, thank you.
with that,
look, we've taken this very
what I'll do with
seriously. I
his
want to say
business
thank you to
is
Carly
that
and James for all the work
I'll
they've
end up
put into this.
putting all the prices up, mate. Double all your prices, whatever. To whatever you have to do now. Quickly try to sell it all off. You've got all, whatever you got in your shop now, you probably brought it at a discount. So just double it, see how it goes. If it doesn't sell, you can go to the news. Hopefully the news will help you out. We'll talk to the world about what Donald Trump does for his ego, that he affects others. That's what I'd do if I was in that boat, I guess. Is that you turn things around and use propaganda a little bit, I guess. Just put your point of view across and your propaganda. And do what the fuel people do. Just quickly put up your prices and go from there. Don't keep them low. Then hope that it gets better, because if you keep them low, you'll get the same amount of money, then it won't. If you put them up, you might slow things down, or put it up to a point where they'll pay, what the rich people always do. How much can we push it? Kind of thing. Then, I won't go as dear, but I'll do this because I may need to do this. When you go to pay for your goods, you expect to pay twice as much. And that's what you can say. That's the loophole. They say you're trying to rip off people or do a trick. I'm not doing any more trick than what they're doing, sir.
And I think particularly to Victorians at the moment is that when homes are getting broken into by kids who are stealing money or stealing valuables to sell, they're fueling a drug habit. They're buying drugs from outlaw motorcycle gang members who are the biggest.
You know what drugs they're buying, everybody?
Amphetamines and drugs in our country.
Amphetamines.
They're stealing cars
exactly.
from your home at the moment because there is a
you know why they get amphetamines? Because you can have amphetamines and then drive. It doesn't pick up in the test. So that I've already talked about that. So that test promotes more higher drugs. right?
And the CFMEU,
And marijuana gets treated just as bad as amphetamine. So they might as well be on amphetamine. They won't go, well, let's go lower and get treated that we're a lower thing on marijuana. But no, they don't do that now. They put everything in the same bracket, right? And treat you like shit. In fact, marijuana, because of their issue, marijuana people are suffering from that. Even go back and look at the history. As soon as these higher drugs come out and the problem come out, they attack marijuana at the same time. Attack those people at the same time. And tobacco people too. Shocking, eh? These meth heads, they've ruined a lot of things. If you go back and check it out. So, if you want to solve some things, really, you go back a little bit like it was back in the old days, you've got to get rid of what turned up when it was the old days. You know what I mean? Crack wasn't around or mentioned as much as what it is today, you know? So perhaps you guys go sort them out. Go sort those crack kingpins out. And you might sort out a lot of issues now forever. Huh? As the police have been the parent that goes, I want them to sort themselves out or I'm going to punish them all. So that's what they're doing. They're doing the parent going, you're all punished because you've got a bad child. And you better go bash each other. Here's some laws about noise complaint so you can bash each other. Pretty hilarious, eh? They're as bad as that. It's like everyone's as bad as each other, eh? Check it out. Tell me if I'm wrong in comments. Let me know. No one will. Because that's how right I am. You see? Because they usually ducktail and run or won't talk about it. Or come in with different tactics. Some bullshit, you know what I mean? Which I'll be talking about in the future about how that works. When you do talk about things, try to have, you know, these days, video evidence and stuff like that that will make more of these cool stories that people have written in order to be more better because they'll have the actual proof with it. So just believe me, yeah, it may have happened. Yeah, it did. You want to see more? Here's another part of the book. You can do some videos and stuff to make more money. Too. Offer more. Yeah, upgraded now, as they say, you know what I mean? For the book people out there, you know what corruption is now? Book person heard that. You can do it, right? What I advise, what's non-corruption is you hear something good advice, you go do it, and if it works, then you better, you know, at least speak about what helped you. Right? And my advice. So that way, you don't look like an asshole doing something that someone else spoke about, but don't get to do it because everyone runs off first kind of thing. And then it doesn't give an opportunity. Definitely the first one, you know, and then it's the first one. The first one might claim that they're the first, you know? That's how it
Under the current laws that we have here in Australia, you only have the ability of the police to target the person.
And it usually don't happen because it's part of...
In other words, you can't go after the bosses and the kingpins who might just sit back and keep their hands clean. What these laws will do will ensure that
find out
the
their
police
history, and you find out where they are now by doing steps. Which is what I did.
If it is shown
told the cops that when I got pulled up for one of my steps. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because I need to talk about an issue and I'm struggling to get that issue across. In fact, the best way to talk about the issue is go through the issue. But guess what? You can't. They say one thing on paperwork, but when you go in there in real life, it's like the internet thing with noise complaint. You can do this and this and this, but you won't say this now, but later you might find out this if you don't like it. If you don't get away with it.
It is a fundamental difference. The organisation itself, but in particular the leadership who sit back, keep their hands clean and often distance themselves from the crime. Yep, again, an organisation is defined in very broad terms. It could be an organisation such as Now Law Motorcycle Gang that has a formal structure in place. It could actually also be, more informally, a group of people who have come together quite deliberately to engage in organised crime.
Exactly.
We will draft our laws based on the Australian context, but at this point in time, it is very much looking at the CFMEU and the criminal elements of that, which it has been infiltrated by organised
crop cycles. What do you reckon?
Asking for drafting resources.
Talk about those crops.
has that urgency to it. And I think we have a basis on which to build the legislation very quickly. And to your question, the CFMEU and the Outlaw Motorcycle Gang members are one and the same. These people are interoperable. They're occupying executive positions and positions of authority on building sites. And some of them aren't turning up at all because it's just a direct cash transfer, because that's what pays the relationship, and that's what makes it work for people like Mick Gatto. So I believe that Mick Gatto, who is obviously a very well organised individual, is worth millions of dollars. I don't understand where that money comes from, but perhaps he can explain that to a court at some stage. But the fact is that somebody like Mr. Gatto, in a very sophisticated way, conducts his business affairs. Now, that's subject to investigation at the moment, which is appropriate. And Nick McKenzie's done a fantastic job with 60 Minutes in identifying some of these allegations. But somebody like Gatto and other crime figures are in the orbit and, under our proposals, are captured because of the conduct that the CFMEU and the outlaw motorcycle gangs and other crime figures are involved in. And it's not just here in Victoria. This is a national enterprise. And this is why the Albanese government is corrupt to its core, because they've facilitated, they've allowed this activity to prosper, and taxpayers ultimately are being ripped off to the tunes of billions of dollars on major projects that are delayed by years. And when you look at what's happening here in Victoria, there are classic examples that people can point to. They know that these projects have just dragged on and on and on, and the cost has escalated, and people have asked why. This is why. Because the Albanese and the Allen government have allowed this corruption to take place. So,
this is why.
Their response is that feelings about all this task force and these allegations. What do you make of that? Do you believe a judicial inquiry or a commission should be called as statement?
Well, did they get the answers? This is why, everybody. Thought this is why I do my job.
It was pathetic. And what it did was it gave a green light for the CFMU to continue.
Gave a green light. Hey, didn't I show you something about a green light? What did that mean? Did they get the CMEU? Oh, sorry, I haven't tried to practice that. Because I don't try to practice or put in the long-term memory of things that I'm not involved with or want to in a certain way. So it does your own long-term memory, you know. As soon as you know you need to, like trying to remember numbers or something, you do that.
And I think the government needs to adopt it. The thing that they can do today without parliamentary is to announce that they're going to deregister the CFMEU. If what we saw last night and what we know and what the government's known for a long time doesn't warrant the deregistering of the CFMEU, I don't know what does. Now, yes, Mr Albanese's party has received $11.5 million in payments from the CFMEU. Yes, the CFMEU still sits on the national executive, and yes, the CFMEU is still involved in the pre-selection of Labor Party candidates at the upcoming federal election. But surely now the Prime Minister can show some strength of leadership and stand up to the CFMEU and stamp out this corrupt practice. That's the onus that's on him.
You want him to admit it.
I think there is a very strong argument for a commission of inquiry, a royal commission, and what we're... Our priority at the moment is to get this legislation through the Parliament next week. We are open to a conversation with the government about a royal commission, and we would encourage them to go down that path, but there are steps that need to be gone through before that can be facilitated. I think whilst the Parliament is sitting next week, we should focus on getting proper laws in place, and if the government is minded to set up a royal commission, then it will be done on a bipartisan basis, and we'll support them with those recommendations that they can bring forward. And that is one of the ways in which you can address what is the biggest corruption scandal in our country's history. Well, Michael, all I can do is be honest with the Australian people about the fact that we have a plan to get our country back on track. The Labor Party spent $2 million over the last 2 months personally slandering me because they don't have a good story to tell themselves. If the last 3 years have been a success for the Albanese government and a success for our country, there wouldn't have been a 30% increase in food prices. People wouldn't be paying 34% more for their gas. people wouldn't be struggling to send their kids to school or to pay to go and see a doctor, but of course they are under this government. So they've thrown mud and they've done the personal tax, and the unions have done that, including the CFMEU over the last couple of months. So you would expect it to have an impact. But as we get closer to the election, the Australian people are going to have a choice. Their choice is between a bad government in minority form, so it will be even worse, which is spending money, driving up inflation, and I think under a re-elected government, which is a minority government between the Labor Party and the Greens, the prospect of higher interest rates is very real again for Australian mortgage holders. That's not the decision I think Australians should make. I think they should back the coalition and my strong leadership to get our country back on track, to manage the economy effectively and efficiently, to stamp out union corruption. I will be seeking a mandate from the Australian people to stamp out union corruption and to deal with the biggest corruption scandal in our country's history. The Prime Minister, his relationship with the CFMEU is to take money from the CFMEU to help them win elections. I will not deal with the CFMEU, who is also, I might point out, a very strong financial supporter of the Australian Greens.
It happened to come up, what, at election time?
Have supported strongly the CFMEU, even where the Australian Labor Party has been embarrassed to do so. So we've got a lot of polling and a lot of contemplation to do between now and the next election. But my desire is to get our country into a better position than it is today and to help families who are really struggling under this government. Well, again, if you look at the negative impact of Labor's polling over the course of the last couple of months, that hasn't involved any policy. It's involved lies and deception. Now, people will see through that by polling day, but Labor is the master at negative campaigning. If the government had a good story to tell, their ads would be about the achievements of the Albanese government. Instead, they've destroyed the economy. Their renewables only policy is destroying the energy market, and that's why people are paying more for their groceries, because the farmer and the storage provider is paying more for their cold room storage. They're paying more for their gas. They're paying more for their electricity. So we'll have a lot to say about policy between now and the election, but today is a very significant policy announcement. It's a policy that's going to root out the corruption, which is at the heart of the Albanese government. And it's going to root out the corruption in the construction sector, and it's going to help families live in safety as opposed to in fear at the moment, as people are doing in Victoria, from worried about their homes being broken into, their cars being stolen. And we have a lot of work ahead of us to tidy up Labor's messes. This is just one of them.
That's definitely true, that one. I've talked about that.
Well, I believe very strongly in AUKUS, and I praised Anthony Albanese as then opposition leader for supporting AUKUS on a bipartisan basis. I think the need for AUKUS is greater than ever, and I think anyone who objectively looks at the deal that was struck with the United States and the United Kingdom sees a capability to underpin our security for the next century. It is a technology that will continue to evolve. It's best in class, and working with the Americans and the Brits, our two most valued allies, is more important than ever, because as the Prime Minister points out, we live in the most precarious period since the Second World War, even though the government's taking money out of defence at the same time they're saying that. We want to see AUKUS succeed, and we are absolutely dedicated to making that the case. Well, I've just given that response.
Stipulations there, widely accepted that the shadow cabinet there won't be that policy. Can you say there won't be an income tax cut policy pre-election?
Well, all the Angus and I and Jane have constantly pointed out, we want a simple, fairer tax system. We want Australians to pay less tax under this government. An average family is paying about $4,000 more tax. So it depends really on where the figures are, and we'll find that out in more detail in the budget next week. We're waiting for the PIFO figures otherwise. So what we don't want to do is fuel inflation, which is what Labor's done. And if you're just splashing money out into the economy as Labor does, you're fueling inflation, which increases interest rates. And this is why I say, don't believe that we have dealt with inflation in this country yet. Inflation hasn't been tamed by Labor. They had 25-point reduction to 12 interest rate increases under this government. And there is a very real prospect under a re-elected Albanese Bank government that interest rates go back up. I'm not going to have a situation where that is possible. We're going to make sure we do everything we can to manage the economy well. It will be difficult after Labor's trashed the economy. That I accept. But we have a track record of dealing with economic management and making economic decisions, including tax cuts. Don't forget, we were the people in government who were the architects of stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3 tax cuts. So if we can afford to do tax cuts, we will. But it will depend on how much money is in the budget, what's going to be inflationary, what other measures are floating around at the time. And I think that's the prudent approach that we expect us to take. Well, I've just made the points that I want to make.
Minister, you mentioned housing prices. Your analysis shows that accessing super could bring up house prices 70%. What will your policy make for housing prices first?
Well, if you did it in the absence of a supply side measure, then yes. But when I talk about a supply side measure, I mean homes being built and coming to market. Now, we've announced a $5 billion plan to go to the point 4 of our policy, a very significant policy, which will create 500,000 new homes, and that will provide an opportunity for Australians who are locked out of the housing market at the moment because of Labor's CFMU tax, which is making housing construction more expensive than ever because of the fact that they brought 1 million people in over the last 2 years through the migration program, which has fueled demand for housing at a time when supplies building approvals are down by 11%. So our plan is to fuel the number of houses that are available to Australians and to provide young Australians with access to housing. I just make this point. If a young Australian 5 years ago had been able to access super and buy
Best
their
way
first
to
home,
teach young Australians, you don't give them houses or units, you give them complex buildings. It's cheap, and they've got to teach us that if they can look after that complex building and get along and don't fight and carry on and be stupid and make loud noises and all this kind of stuff, and prove it. And if they're good in that area, even if there's bad ones, they can show people certain ways of that. They can get a place over time. You got to earn it. But at least they'll be in the crap of their own crap till they earn it. You know what I mean? That's the best way I approach young people. Now, they used to make these little, what they call dog kennels for college kids. But similar to that, but not actually be dog kennels. Decent 1 bedroom, maybe even 2 bedrooms with young adults with a child. Right? Gives them time to have social workers and all that. Go to these places where they all need to be as well. So social workers money to drive around and sort out the issues they have so they can move on to the next area. You know what I mean? And you can house them there instead of getting those buildings built and then have all sorts of good people and bad people. The government can, if you're going to build something, build them. That's right. Definitely for the young or for the old. The old usually get along. And that's a way of housing the old too.
I think in the absence of any other supply measure,
units like this one, stuff like that. Space. Old people don't like too much area. They just want it just right where they can easily clean up, make it easy access and all that kind of stuff. And they can all share the same thing instead of building it over and over again, a ramp, but they can all share.
Promises that they made, they not built one single house during their period in government, which is why they continue to persecute.
Sort out crisis is definitely a crisis.
Right, thank you very much.
What do you reckon? Oh, happy duck top down, yeah.
So I started training at the age of 14. A lot of these older guys had these stretch marks on their chest, on their arms. I didn't like it.
Starting to see the vision a little bit.
16 years or so since I finished my own.
Starting to see the vision a little bit now.
Religiously, no matter what.
Let's try and keep the line together. Okay.
Here comes the interrupters. And they interrupt in all sorts of forms. Disrupting people's lives because it's copyright. But yeah, they're trying to advertise, so I don't know why they would want to do it in that area. But sometimes if they need money and there's a loophole or a way to get it, they do it.
We give the call to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To Australians listening tonight, thank you very much for your time. Soon you'll have a say in determining the future of our great country. We live literally in the best country in the world, and we're the beneficiaries of what our forebears have built and defended. We love this country because it has forged us into a remarkable people. We're compassionate, we're stoic, we're fair, and we're quietly patriotic. We cherish this country because it affords opportunities.
We know they repeat a lot, so we're not going to do that.
We are going to take you live to Melbourne, where opposition leader Peter Dutton is about to deliver a major pre-election pitch.
Oh, no, we've got to repeat it
We
now.
are going to take you live to that.
More than likely.
Evening. Melbourne's underworld tobacco war has roared back to life with a suspected foot soldier gunned down in
And these people are dying over tobacco.
22-year-old survived.
Shocking, eh? That'll be like in the future when they ban spices. That you'll hear people doing shootouts because people want spices. You know what I mean, Emma? People are dying now because other people are trying to supply the market. Right? Otherwise, there'd be no market there. So the government creates this problem, loophole, and issue. They created the issue by allowing people to smoke. Right? Now they've created this issue, and someone has to fill the market. Someone will, otherwise the government will be in more issues than what they believe they're in. Right? That's the truth when you go look up all these problems when it comes to the underworld, as they call it, and all that kind of stuff. The government creates a lot of those issues. More worse than what they need to be. The underworld's even more worse now. Look what we're hearing. Because of the tobacco, because the government wants to control how you smoke tobacco. Shocking, ain't it?
Yeah, I don't want Taco Bell.
This underworld. You let me know in comments. Is this thing still going? If I'm wrong about that the government has created this problem right now because they want to create how you smoke your cigarettes. It's not because they made laws out that you can't smoke around people and that. That was all legit. So it's funny how they do legit things and then they go off legit. Right? But now they want to put up costs, right? The government is as bad as these people. These people put up costs beyond the scenes because of each other, right? The government and them. And you see? That's why I say sometimes the underworld and the government are actually pretty similar. Right? And they've created each other too. More problems. Hey, babies. Something to scream for? Yeah. Feel like I said, I won't get a comment, will I? Because it's actually a part of what I'm talking about right now. They create more problems to themselves by shooting and attacking and bullying in certain areas. They shouldn't even do that. It's like getting more work when you still got a lot of work to do. Oh, hang on. It's a little bit like I'm doing now. I'm going from one project to another. I'm getting most out so I can easily remind myself and finish up other projects and stuff. Sort of rush like that. Where it looks like I'm not finishing things, but then all of a sudden I can. And when I need to. But it just certainly makes sure it starts functioning, you know what I mean? Or able to remind me to not forget about it. How do you run when you're in a rush like that? Try and do a lot at once. Perhaps you might even get lucky to put out your point across before you finish. Things like that. You can say you're in a rush when you know things are so far behind. Could make you in a rush. As the governments did at COVID time, they quickly rushed to make the rules of shutting down and making what we can see now these days even more issues as they eschewed away. Instead of using facts and being a bit slower on using what people say. People are free. You go out and give them facts and go, there's dangerous disease out there, and they go out and get sick and don't listen, and you put out the advice, right? And they get sick. That's their fault, government. They can die and whinge, go, they can try to do the stepbrother thing, you reckon? Why did you let us go out? Well, it's freedom, sorry, but we did tell you about it, didn't we? And why didn't you hear the news? Well, you should have hoped that your family cared about you. Someone would have heard. Go see them while they didn't tell you. You know what I mean, people? Because that's the issue. Other than that, we don't live under a rock, do we? You're on that island that throws spears. You know what I mean? Certain information set for a week should be pretty clear. If it wasn't, it would be very rare circumstance. But you heard like every person playing the same trick, as they like to do these days, or play the same, oh, he did it, I'm going to do it now. He said it. You got away with it. I want to say it. Why can't I now? People say that about court law. What was it? Oh, either way, what did you say? Did the girls work? Did the path? Did the love spell? What happened? Somewhere on over here. Looks like it's been cleaned and flushed. Definitely suck the energy out of itself on that one. Oh, it's like we just got 3/4 of the tree growing here. It's a little bit more, it's growing a little bit more as we go along. I wonder if during this next weather it'll finish off, you know what I mean? Anyway, I'm not going to ask you to be dark. Oh, I just got to weave this last little bit. Yeah, but that's how it looks now. I'll cut it up a little bit more later. I'll drop some weave and sort itself out, make some little peaks and all that kind of stuff. Stick it this way. And then I'll reshape it in another month or two. That's it. Now, what would you call that? In some cases, I'd call it the E. It's the E factor they're doing. As like I said, I don't have fans, but someone else does, don't they? That like to block and do devious things. When you do that and you block someone and you believe you own their ass, what devious tricks do you do? You believe you would go into videos so they speak about you, so you can actually talk about things on your area? You know what I mean, people? I know it's been happening for a little while. And then they go pay everybody, and these type of people that do these things, they bib a lot and they steal a lot of information. It's not theirs. As they're the true sinners, and probably relatives of the sinners of Jesus. They will still be kicking, they'll be a cult, right? They kill Jesus, and they don't want to repent in their sins or talk about their sins of their history or anything. They want to believe that they're king and top shit humans and still dominate all the rest of the humans. It's their right. A little bit like the king thinking, you know, kings and queens, do they say that? Well, they're not so much living these days, because they believed it was their right to do certain things to certain people. I don't know where you can go. Sad, isn't it? And anyway, like I say to these people sometimes, these kings should go fight their own battles and that. These cowards who come and confront people. They're such cowards. They need a whole team planning. They've got to be ready when their ego's ready. They've got to have all the upper, the kings with all the armour and all that shit. And, Gladiator, he prods the gladiator. The history has never changed. It's the repeat sin. In fact, that's what they're stuck in. They don't even know it. They think they're getting somewhere, and they don't. They think they're getting somewhere. Collectively, they're stuck in the sins because of the group, what they've done ages ago. Because you can imagine the story. It makes sense. I can do a whole movie about it, where alien species rock up and they've got a heaven. They're heaven type of species. They've already dealt with narcissists and arsehole planets and shit like that, right? And they want to have a test. What would they do? They would drop a kid off and go, well, let's go find out. They wouldn't keep doing it, though. I'll tell you that. You'd definitely learn it. You'd do something for the first time and then you'll learn from it. Never make sure that never happens again. And it's your people is heaven. We have heaven. We don't have deaths very often. It's a big thing, forever remembered. All right? And so what would happen to this world when you do such a thing to such a creature from there? What would you think would happen? You reckon they'd have the technology to put you in a loop? What do you reckon? I don't know. I don't care, because sinners are sinners, and you shouldn't worry about sinners or anything that lives in there. Even if they have a good kid, in the end, it's the sinner's fault. Sorry, your dad let you down. Your mother let you down. See? That's all there is to it, isn't it? And until we can collectively stop, or these sinners collectively go shoot themselves in the head, collectively run off, to allow their kids to actually not be sinners, it'll never happen. And that won't happen, will it? Unless God comes and collectively does this, but he gives free will and so on. Anyway, I thought I'd just chuck a little bit of biblical out. Last little bit there. Even though it's not my actual job. Let me know if you think I'd be good at it. Let me know. What do you mean? I don't know. What do you mean, man? Anyway, let's see how this turns out. And hopefully it works out, not too weirdo looking. But I want it to at least show me something. Otherwise, I trim it to make something. You know what I mean? What do I see? Does it feel for me? What does the story say? What do I see? Have a good one. And you know what? Games. When did you grow out of games? And when you do play games, why do you play games? Is it for entertainment for a little bit because you're bored? Or is it a life religion? Some groups are like that, where they just play games to each other all the time. The ego ones usually. But anyway, bye again.